This is the biggest and baddest matchless amp in existence, and we named it Hulk because it is angry, big and green. Hey everyone, this is Carlos from Amalgam Audio, and in this episode of Storytime we're going to take a look at the Matchless SuperChief 120. So as previously announced, this year for Amalgam Audio it's going to be a year of tiny and huge amps, and obviously this falls into the former category, and this is one of the biggest amps in our collection. It is certainly, by guitar standards, a real monster. Other acquisitions that we had recently for this year are a couple of single-ended amps from Fender, Supro, Gibson, and Vox. And on the other side we have this Matchless SuperChief. We have a Marshall Major that we recently acquired, and the Super Dragon by Sound Dragon Amps, which we're really eager to release in the coming months. The Matchless SuperChief 120 is a very unique amp from Matchless. It is the biggest guitar model that they have ever released. Apart from that, they have the Standard Chief, which is a model for bass guitar, which features KT88 tubes. This one features 4 EL34 tubes for a total of 120 watts. It is the only Matchless amp for guitar which is fixed bias. All of the other guitar amps are actually cathode biased, and that is also one of the reasons why those other models are low wattage. The amp is actually derived of a high watt circuit, so it is high watt inspired, but tonally it actually sounds like a typical Matchless amp with the steely top end that we know from their other offerings. But as this one has a really huge power reserve, it has a punch and a core tone that is actually unmatched by any other Matchless amp. As typical for the Matchless brand, you have a beautiful backlight to the whole amp, but despite its high watt based lineage, it sounds like a full-blown Matchless amp. It has the typical steely top end. You can dial the mids back a bit, so it has this very specific Matchless scoop to it, which is like a mix of a British and American tone. And like any other Matchless amp, it has this gain switch, and that allows you to dial in some higher gain tones where the circuit is reconfigured for a bit of more gain. Channel controls are the typical volume, or in this case it's gain because it also has a master volume, and the typical tone stack of treble, mids and bass, and it has a brilliance control, and that brilliance control is actually the usual cut control that we know from Vox amps, but here it's labeled brilliance. And the tone stack on this amp is extremely sensitive and interactive. The bass knob is very touch sensitive, so to speak. You can dial in some thinner tones by dialing it to 0. It reacts really well to that, and you can beef it up to more low end than you will ever need. The mids control is extremely interactive. On about 8 and above, it will start to sound quite a bit like a Marshall, and if you dial it back to 7 or even a bit less, it will actually start to bring out some of those more unique Matchless qualities. So there's going to be some of that specific Matchless scoop, and the treble is going to change and morph more into this steely top end thing that we know and love from Matchless. And although it has a lot of treble, it doesn't sound harsh if you dial in the brilliance to the maximum. It is actually very defined, and to me it sounds like the biggest Vox AC30 amp you could imagine. It has like, despite this high watt lineage, it rather sounds like a Vox amp. The name of the model, SuperChief, suggests that it is similar to the Chieftain, that is lower powered amp by Matchless, but it actually sounds distinctively different. Of course, way bigger, but also the mids sound different. It is also not as bright and at some points strident as the Chieftain might sound. And despite the massive headroom and wattage that this amp puts out, it's still not stiff sounding or in any way hard in the ears. And one of the reasons is that, as unusual it is for a over 100 watt amp, it has actually a tube rectifier. And the tube rectifier is a double 5U4G tube, and that gives this nice tube sag and a smoother transition on the transients than it would be the case with a solid-state rectifier. So despite its high watt lineage, this amp sounds like a Vox AC30 went to the gym for 6 days a week for a couple of years, and this is what you end up with. This huge beast of an amp that actually delivers what so many designs have claimed to do, to improve or to make the AC30 larger. Simply put, this amp has the balls that the AC30 has actually been missing all the years, and so many designs have been trying to put this into the equation, but this amp really delivers on that. If you want a bigger sounding Vox AC30, despite the hugely different design of the amp, it actually is an option to consider. One of the things that people will say about Matchless amp is they have this 3D quality to the clean tone and overdriven tones, and this is more than ever the case with this amp. It has really some sparkle that is not to find in any other amp. It's really unique. And the way how it handles the turning back of your volume control on the guitar is just spectacular. You can go from pristine cleans, like a crystalline bell-like clean, to a total flat-out crunch, and it handles that with ease. Despite it being a 120 watt amp, it actually has ample amounts of compression, which give it this nice, spongy, soft feel. And you have still a lot of dynamics, but at the same time it is also what people usually refer to as touch sensitivity, which means this interaction with the volume control on your guitar or with how hard you pick with your right hand. It really lets you go from really clean passages to a really flat out crunch tones. So one of the great tones to be found in this amp is when you crunch it up nicely to about 6 or 7 on the volume. The bass control is quite heavy on the bass, so when you get to crunch territory, the best would be to rather keep it low from 2 or probably even below that, because it has really ample amounts of low end. And then the real magic happens with the mids control, because it's extremely interactive. It kind of transforms the amp between 2 different amps almost, I could say. From the mids on about 8 or higher, you will get like a Marshall-like tone and response. When you go to 7 or below, it morphs into something very, very different. It scoops out the mids quite heavily, and it starts to sound like a typical Matchless kind of sound that has more of this steely top end and some scoop to it, and still a very tight and strong bottom end. And on the treble side, depending on your pickups, I would say from anywhere from 2 to 4 is probably the sweet spot. For single coils, I'd go with something like 2, and for humbuckers, 3 to 4 might be a good place to start. I keep the brilliance control wide open all the time. The amp has a lot of high end, but it doesn't actually sound in any way harsh or unmusical, so there's no reason to dial that out. But in case if you want to tame some of the higher highs, this is the way to go. And the master volume doesn't do really big wonders for you if you want to have a low output volume, but it is a really nice tool if you want to dial in some more harmonics or less of it. So anywhere between 7 to 10 is a good place to start for some nice rock tones. Okay, I'm going to play a couple of licks, and let's find out how this setting sounds through the microphones. The 4x12 speaker cab features Matchless branded Celestion speakers, and as unusual it is for a 4x12, this cab actually is open back, so it fills the room beautifully with a huge wall of sound. It would be a missed opportunity when talking about the Matchless amp not to mention the way they're built and their craftsmanship and attention to detail, which is just impeccable. There's basically no other amp brand that comes close to this level of precision. The only thing that comes close are the old Hiwatts from the Harry Joyce era. They're built to a very similar level, but the build quality of those amps is just literally matchless. Okay guys, I hope you're gonna really enjoy this amp. It is really something special. Fabian is gonna play us out on some captures we made of this amp. Like and subscribe to the channel if you like the content and want to see more. See you around.